So, would the U.S. men's team compete better? Coming right on. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense Logic and Reason. And as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So, the World Cup is over. And by and large, I would say it's been a huge success. You know, America did a great job of hosting. Also, I hear, Mexico, people had such a wonderful time in Mexico. I haven't heard a whole lot of great stories coming from Canada, but many people are saying this World Cup go down as probably one of the greatest, if not the best World Cup ever. Everybody just had such a wonderful time. And of course, there's no secret that a lot of the myths of America has been shattered now because of the people coming here and seeing America firsthand for themselves. But I also want to say congratulations to Spain. They won the World Cup. They beat Argentina. And now they've won the men's World Cup and the last women's World Cup. So congratulations to Spain. Well deserved. Now, it is, as I said, it's no secret that U.S. men's team hasn't competed very well on the global stage. And of course, people have said for years that world football in America is basically a third-tier sport. As a result, it draws third-tier talent. And right now in America, most of our male talent goes to the big three. American football, basketball, and baseball. So that is absolutely true. That's the truth. I mean, that statement is true, that the best talent in America just doesn't play world football. Not to say there isn't an infrastructure here, because then remember we have the phrase, the soccer mom. So kids play it when they're younger, but they start filtering, as far as men anyway. They start filtering to the big three as they get older. Now, I agree with this, that if world football was as popular in the United States of America, let's say that instead of the big three, we had the big four, and world football was as popular in America as it is in the rest of the world, then more of our better talent would filter into world football, and America would do better on the global stage. Now, of course, a lot of, global football fans say otherwise. They have a tendency to get way in their feelings over their football. They'll say it wouldn't happen. Now, I have to disagree with that. I have to push back on that. You can't tell me that if better talent started filtering to the game, that the U.S. men wouldn't compete better. Well, let's look at the evidence. First of all, let's look at the U.S. women's team. Right? In the same country in which world football is a third-tier sport, the women's U.S. team have been dominant. I mean, they've had a very dominant run. They've won 2 out of the last 3 World Cups. And they also went to the finals against Japan in 2011, a game in which I watched that game, and they were severely better. But that game there is evidence that the best team doesn't always win. Sometimes there's a lot of factors, but they were clearly the better team. But Japan fought, and they won. So but however, with that being said, though, the U.S. women have won 4 World Cups. They won 4 World Cups and 5 gold medals at the Olympics. So they've, again, since 1984, they've had a very dominant run. Now the difference is that women don't have other sports to draw talent away. Basically, there's only really 2 major leagues for women in the United States of America. And that's the WNBA and the Women's National Soccer League. That's it. Whereas in men have, again, like I said, we have the big 3, as well as other second-tier sports that draws talent. So you can't tell me that if more talent was filtered into world football, that the U.S. men team wouldn't compete better. And then we look at the Olympics. I mean, the U.S. is always at the top of the medal count when it's all said and done. And I'm not just talking about, events that people don't care about. Nobody watches archery. I'm talking about the sports that people watch: basketball, track and field, volleyball, beach volleyball, gymnastics, swimming. U.S. do extremely well in these sports and win and with a high medal count and a lots of gold medals. So if U.S. can compete on that high level in all these various other sports in the Olympics, the ones that people actually watch, then I don't understand how anyone could think that American men wouldn't compete better in global world football if more talent filtered there. Now, I'm not saying that we would just dominate. No, I'm not saying that at all. But we would definitely compete better, and we will be considered one of the top teams on the planet every year, one of the top teams in the world, and would have won several World Cups by now. Again, I'm not saying that the U.S. men's team would dominate. Not at all. But they will be much more competitive, and nobody can really argue against that. Because like I said, the evidence is clear. Now, I know that when it comes down to women's football, a lot of teams across the world don't get nearly as much training and practice as men. So that has to be taken into consideration. Perhaps maybe women's teams get more practice and training than other women around the world. But like I said, the men would still compete. The U.S. men would still compete, and nobody can really say otherwise. Unless they're in their feelings. Anyway, y'all, like I said, that's my 2 cents on this. You cannot tell me that if world football was more popular in America and it drew more male talent, that the U.S. men's team would compete better. That would be ridiculous. Anyway, y'all, as always, until next time.